Why would someone as composed, disciplined, and grounded as a Capricorn ever need to lie? We tend to associate lies with chaos, recklessness, or emotional manipulation, none of which align with the usual Capricorn stereotype. But here's where it gets interesting. When Capricorns lie, it's not random, it's rarely emotional, and it's almost never sloppy. In fact, Capricorns' lies are usually calculated, quiet, and deeply rooted in logic. They're not the type to spin wild stories just for the thrill. If they lie, there's a reason, and most of the time it's about control, preservation, or power. Let's be clear, not all Capricorns lie, and not all lies are malicious. But if you've ever felt like a Capricorn was withholding something, rephrasing a truce, or hiding their real intentions behind a polished exterior, you probably weren't imagining it. They don't lie out of impulse. They lie when it serves a purpose. And that's what makes it so fascinating. Because these aren't people who want to deceive. They just see the truth as something that must be managed carefully, selectively, and sometimes withheld altogether. In this video, we're going beyond the memes, beyond the shallow Zodiac cliches, to uncover the real reasons why Capricorn lies, and in which situations you're most likely to catch them doing it. If you're ready for raw, unfiltered truth about the most mysterious Earth sign, subscribe now to Secret of the Zodiac and hit that like button, because we're just getting started. And trust me, this is where it gets deep. Let's begin with two of the most common reasons Capricorns lie, and why in their eyes, it's not even really lying. It's protecting something bigger. Number one, to protect their reputation. Let's talk about image, not vanity, not surface-level ego, but reputation. For Capricorn, reputation isn't just a label, it's currency, it's safety, it's the armor they wear in a world they don't fully trust. And because they work so hard to build that image of being competent, reliable, unshakable, they will do almost anything to defend it, even if that means lying. But their lies here aren't dramatic or exaggerated. In fact, many of them sound like silence, evasion, a conveniently vague answer, a version of the truth that's been airbrushed just enough to preserve the image they've curated. You might think, what's the big deal? Everyone wants to look good. But for Capricorn, it goes deeper. They associate their worth with their credibility. They want to be seen as people who have it together, who don't fail, who make smart decisions and live with intention. So when something threatens that, a mistake, a weakness, a crack in their perfect wall, they may lie. Not to deceive you, but to protect their standing, especially in professional or social environments where they feel being judged is inevitable. They fear that one slip could undo years of effort. And if you know anything about Capricorns, you know they are builders. Builders of careers, legacies, trust. Every brick matters. So if a half-truth helps them keep the foundation intact, they'll stack it with precision. This type of lie doesn't scream for attention. It slips by unnoticed, unless you know what to look for. A Capricorn will dodge questions with ease. They'll keep things professional, gloss over emotional details, or act like everything's fine when it's clearly not, all to maintain that smooth, untouchable exterior. And if they ever get caught, don't expect a dramatic confession. Expect a pivot, a shift, a perfectly worded explanation that sounds just honest enough. But under that control is something softer, something raw, which brings us to number two, to avoid emotional vulnerability. Capricorn isn't heartless, they're guarded. This sign, ruled by Saturn, has learned that life doesn't give out rewards easily. They've experienced emotional weight early on, and many Capricorns carry an internalized belief that feelings are liabilities. So when the truth involves emotional exposure, especially feelings they haven't fully processed, they might lie, or more accurately, hide. They'll downplay how much they care. They'll say, it's not a big deal, when it's tearing them apart. They'll ghost instead of confessing they're scared. They'll lie and say they're busy when really, they're overwhelmed by something personal they don't know how to express. Here's the twist. Capricorns crave deep, loyal connections, but they're terrified of looking needy, weak, or dependent. Vulnerability feels like losing control, and losing control is their worst fear. So rather than admitting hurt, love, fear, jealousy, or even joy, they'll sometimes craft a more acceptable version of reality, a version that keeps them emotionally safe. They'd rather be seen as cold than broken. And this isn't just in romantic relationships. It happens with friends, family, even colleagues. If showing their real emotions could make them look fragile or disrupt their reputation, remember reason number one, they'll suppress, deny, or straight up fabricate a calmer version of the truth. Let's imagine a Capricorn who's falling for someone but afraid the feeling isn't mutual. Instead of opening up, they might act indifferent, or worse, claim they're not interested at all. Not because it's true, but because the pain of rejection feels more dangerous than loneliness. Or maybe a Capricorn friend is going through a mental health struggle, but when asked how they're doing, they say, "I'm good, just tired." That's a lie, a soft one, but still a lie. And they tell it because letting you in feels riskier than faking resilience. This kind of lying isn't about manipulation, it's about protection. Capricorn lies to protect their heart, their mind, their peace. They don't lie to hurt others. They lie to avoid being hurt themselves. What makes it complicated is how believable they are. Capricorns are masters at wearing masks that look real. You wouldn't suspect anything was off unless you looked closely, unless you knew them deeply. And even then, they'll resist. They've trained themselves to believe that emotions are private, almost sacred, something to be handled behind closed doors. So if honesty means crying in public, admitting they're not okay, or confessing they need help, many Capricorns will lie instead, quietly, subtly, with a straight face and steady voice. But here's the thing. Behind every Capricorn lie about emotions is a silent hope that someone might see through it and still stay. Because at the end of the day, Capricorn doesn't want to be alone. They just want to feel safe enough to tell the truth. And speaking of control and safety, some of Capricorn's lies aren't about hiding who they are, but about shaping the world around them, creating outcomes that fit their plan. Let's move on to the next two reasons, ones that reveal just how deeply strategic and cautious this sign can be. Number 3, to maintain control. Control isn't just a preference for Capricorn, it's a necessity. While some signs chase freedom or spontaneity, Capricorn thrives on structure, predictability, and strategy. They want to know where things are going, how they're unfolding, and, most importantly, that they have a hand in directing the outcome. When that control feels threatened, a Capricorn may choose to lie, not in an explosive or dramatic way, but in the way they know best, subtle, composed, and nearly undetectable. Let's say they are managing a group project and someone brings a new idea that could shift the dynamic. Capricorn might nod, smile, and say, "We'll consider it," even though they've already decided that idea won't see daylight. That's not honesty, that's diplomacy. That's quiet control dressed as cooperation. They lie to steer the ship without drawing attention to the wheel. Control to them isn't about dominance, it's about security. It's about knowing that they can rely on outcomes, that chaos won't ruin their carefully built plans. So when the truth introduces too much unpredictability, they might adjust it, not because they're trying to deceive you in a harmful way, but because telling the whole truth could cause a ripple effect they're not willing to deal with. They are the chess players of the Zodiac. Every word, every move, every omission is intentional. If the honest truth puts someone else in a position of power over them, emotional, professional, or social, Capricorn will protect their standing by reshaping the story just enough to keep control in their corner. You might hear something like, "I've got it handled," when they clearly don't. Or, "I'm just waiting to hear back," when no one's returning their calls. These lies aren't meant to manipulate you. They're meant to preserve their role as the one who's got it together, the one who's steering the course. But what happens when the person who's always in control makes a mistake? That brings us to number 4, to cover up mistakes. For Capricorn, failure is personal. It's not just a bump in the road, it's a threat to their identity. These are people who often measure their worth by what they can achieve, what they can prove, and how effectively they can rise above life's challenges. So when they mess up, especially in a way that's visible, their instinct is not confession, it's containment. And sometimes containment looks like a lie. Let's say a Capricorn forgets an important deadline or lets someone down. Do they come clean immediately and fall on the sword? Not always. Their first instinct might be to create a version of events that reduces the damage. I never got the email, or there was a tech issue, or I thought it was due next week. These little distortions aren't about blaming others. They're about avoiding shame, because underneath that composed exterior is a voice that says, you can't afford to look weak. You have to be better than this. You're not allowed to fail. Capricorns often grew up in environments that demanded high performance, or at least felt like they did. So they internalized the message. If you mess up, you lose respect, you lose love, you lose stability. So when something goes wrong, their instinct isn't always to face it head on. It's to neutralize it as quickly and quietly as possible. This can be especially true in high-stakes environments, work, family leadership roles, or even long-term relationships where they've taken on the role of the strong one. They don't want you to see the cracks. They don't want to explain. They want to fix it behind the scenes or make it disappear. And here's the thing. Capricorn doesn't lie here to avoid consequences. They often carry guilt like armor. What they want to avoid is disappointment. Not just disappointing others, disappointing themselves. Because for Capricorn, a mistake isn't just a problem to solve. It's a question of identity. That's why the lies they tell to cover mistakes aren't grand. They're controlled, efficient, clean. Lies meant to restore balance before anyone notices the imbalance. But these lies come at a cost. Internally, Capricorn feels the weight. They might act unaffected, but inside, there's a storm of self-criticism. They'll replay the mistake over and over. They'll promise themselves it won't happen again. They'll double down on discipline. You may never know they lied, but they do, and that guilt lingers. The irony is, Capricorn holds themselves to such high standards that sometimes they forget. Everyone slips, everyone breaks, everyone screws up. But instead of embracing that truth, they try to outrun it. And sometimes a lie feels faster than a confession. It's not cowardice, it's survival. It's the same voice that says, if they see you fail, they won't trust you again. And that fear drives the cover-up. But what happens when the lie isn't about what already happened, but what they're planning next? Because Capricorn doesn't only lie to defend the past, they lie to protect the future. And that leads us to the next two reasons. One's rooted in secrecy, privacy, and long-term vision. Number 5, to keep their plans private. Some people lie to cover their tracks. Capricorn lies to keep their tracks invisible from the start. Privacy, to a Capricorn, is not just a preference. It's part of their strategy. This is a sign that thrives on long-term goals, vision, and the power of timing. So when they're building something, a career move, a relationship decision, a big lifestyle change, they often don't want anyone in the world to know until it's already done. Why? Because to them, talking too early invites opinions, interference, and worst of all, failure under a spotlight. The pressure of people watching, asking questions, or giving unsolicited advice can feel like a threat to their process. So they lie, or at least they selectively share. They might say, I'm not planning anything right now, while deep down, they've already set the wheels in motion for a major life shift. It's not deception for the sake of ego. It's protection of the plan. This behavior often comes from early life experiences. Maybe they were criticized for dreaming too big. Maybe someone close once sabotaged a goal. Or maybe they just learned that sharing too soon opens the door for disappointment. So now, they keep their blueprints locked away, only revealing the finished product when it's too polished to be questioned. If you've ever been close to a Capricorn and suddenly found out they're changing careers, moving across the country, or ending a long-term relationship, and you had no clue it was coming, that's this in action. They'll lie by omission. They'll play it cool, because letting you in before they're ready feels like giving up control. But this can create distance. Friends and loved ones might feel shut out, left in the dark, and sometimes the Capricorn genuinely doesn't understand why people are upset. From their point of view, they were just protecting the process, not rejecting you. Here's a simple truth about Capricorns. They believe silence is safer than vulnerability. And when silence isn't enough to protect what they're building, They'll mask the truth entirely, and when truth risks stirring up conflict, that brings us to the next core reason. Number 6, to avoid confrontation. Capricorn might seem like someone who's not afraid of anything. After all, they're grounded, steady, often in charge. But here's what many don't realize. Capricorns are exhausted by emotional chaos. They don't enjoy drawn-out arguments, messy feelings, or impulsive reactions. So when a situation smells like it could get heated or unpredictable, they'll do what they do best: control it. And sometimes that means lying. They might say, "It's fine," when it's not. Or, "No, I'm not upset," when they're boiling inside. Why? Because starting that confrontation feels like opening a box they can't close. They're not afraid of you. They're afraid of what might unfold if they say what they really feel. Capricorn is the sign of long-term consequences. They don't just react, they calculate. And when they weigh the cost of speaking their truth versus the chaos it might cause, they often choose peace, even if that peace is built on a lie. Take relationships, for example. Let's say they're dating someone who's starting to cross a boundary. Instead of calling it out directly, a Capricorn might shift the conversation, fake agreement, or lie about what's bothering them just to avoid the emotional labor of a fight. It's not because they don't care, it's because they care too much about stability. They want to avoid burning bridges or saying things they can't take back. In the workplace, they might lie about their workload, their opinions, or their frustrations with a manager or colleague. They'll say, "No worries, I've got it," even when they're drowning, all because confronting authority or co-workers feels like unnecessary friction in a system they're trying to climb. And what's worse, they often resent themselves for it later. Capricorns don't enjoy lying. It's not thrilling, it's not fun. It's a survival tactic. They do it because the alternative, an open, messy, emotional confrontation, feels riskier than swallowing their truth. But the truth doesn't disappear. It builds, it collects interest, and eventually, Capricorn either explodes in a way they hate or withdraws completely, still never having said what needed to be said. What they truly crave is calm communication. But many haven't been shown what that looks like, so they lie to keep the surface smooth while a storm brews underneath. And here's where things take an even deeper turn. Because not all Capricorn lies are reactive. Some are proactive. Some are built into the strategy itself, a tool for getting what they want when they want it, without ever having to reveal too much. And that leads us right into the next two reasons, ones that might surprise you with how deliberate, even cold, they can be. Number 7, when they're playing the long game. Capricorns don't like being obvious. In their world, transparency equals vulnerability, and vulnerability, unless it's deeply earned, is dangerous. That's why even in matters of love, career, and ambition, they'll stay quiet, downplay their desires, or feed you a redirection while they're executing something entirely different behind the scenes. It's not about lying to you. It's about not giving others the chance to interfere with the bigger picture. Capricorns are architects. They don't show you the blueprint. They wait until the foundation is solid before inviting you in. That means you could be close to a Capricorn and still not know what they're building. They might tell you, "I'm just figuring it out," while they're working on something months in the making. It could be a business, a move, a breakup, a reinvention. Whatever it is, they lie about their intentions to keep the path clear. Because when you're playing the long game, one premature truce can invite doubt, distraction, or derailment. And Capricorn refuses to risk that. This can sometimes make them seem cold or even manipulative. But if you look closer, what you'll usually find is a deep sense of purpose, a plan they're unwilling to compromise. And honesty, as noble as it sounds, often invites interference. So they lie, just a little, to buy time, to protect the vision, to ensure the outcome stays under their control. They believe that when the time is right, the truth will come out, on their terms. And sometimes lying isn't even about outcomes. It's about observation. Capricorns use silence and deception to study the people around them. This is especially true when they aren't sure who they can trust. Which brings us into number 8, to test loyalty. Capricorns carry old wounds, wounds from betrayal, abandonment, or being let down after they gave too much. And they remember. They may forgive in theory, but forget never. That history lives in their emotional muscle memory, and it influences how they approach trust for the rest of their lives. Testing loyalty becomes a survival mechanism. A Capricorn might say something false, something just small enough to be safe, but real enough to seem significant. And then they wait. Watch. If the story gets repeated, if it comes back twisted, they know you're not safe. This isn't to trap or punish. It's to filter, to identify who deserves access to the inner sanctum of their truths. This extends into romantic relationships too. Capricorns don't do shallow love. They don't offer their heart on a silver platter. If they're going to invest in you, they need to know you can hold their emotional weight. So they'll run quiet tests. Will you notice when their energy drops? Will you check in when they go quiet? Will you show up even when they're pushing you away with silence or sarcasm? And if you don't, they log it. Not in anger, in data. Lying in this context isn't always verbal. Sometimes it's a performance, pretending not to care, pretending they don't need you, pretending they're fine just to see how far you'll go to reach them. These loyalty tests are subtle but heavy. They might fake indifference to see if you chase, or play distant to see if you fight for closeness. It's a heartbreaking habit because deep down, what Capricorn wants most is someone who doesn't need to be tested at all. Someone who just stays, shows up, reads between the lines and chooses them, not for what they show, but for what they hide. But even when someone passes the test, it doesn't always mean Capricorn will suddenly open up. It just means you get access to a slightly less filtered version of their truth. And even that is a hard-earned privilege. And yes, this method has its flaws. It can damage trust, confuse people, or lead to misunderstandings. But for Capricorn, the pain of possibly trusting the wrong person outweighs the risk of pushing away the right one. Because ultimately, every Capricorn lie comes from one of two places: protection or precision. They protect themselves, their plans, their peace. And they use precision to time, structure, and reveal their truth when they feel it's safest. But not all lies are so layered. Some stem from something simpler, something we all wrestle with in our own way: pride. So what happens when Capricorn tells a lie not to play a game or test someone's heart, but simply because admitting the truth would mean admitting they're not perfect? Number 9, out of sheer pride. Pride runs deep in Capricorn, not the loud, showy kind. Not the look-at-me ego of someone desperate for attention. Capricorn pride is quieter, more internal. It's about self-image, self-discipline, and a fierce commitment to being seen as capable, strong, and self-sufficient. Always. That's why when they feel like the truth might expose their flaws, their mistakes, or their less than perfect sides, they may lie. Not out of arrogance, but out of self-protection. Because for Capricorn, being vulnerable feels like falling off a pedestal they built for themselves, one brick at a time, over years. Capricorns hate looking weak. They hate needing help. They hate admitting they didn't meet their own expectations. So when the truth threatens that image, pride kicks in, and the lie steps in to protect it. Imagine a Capricorn who lost a job but hasn't told anyone. They'll say, "I'm consulting now," or "I took some time off to reassess," not because they're ashamed of losing a job, but because they're ashamed of not being in control. Or picture one who's emotionally shattered after a breakup. Instead of saying, "It broke me," they'll say, "It was mutual," or "It just wasn't the right time," because admitting pain feels like giving away power. Their lies are often filters, ways to maintain dignity when life doesn't go according to plan. But this pride isn't toxic by default. It's learned. Capricorn pride often comes from being told they had to hold it together, that they were the strong one, the responsible one, that breaking down wasn't an option, that admitting defeat meant disappointing the people who counted on them. So they carry that pressure quietly. And when they fail, or even think they've failed, the instinct to lie is tied to a much deeper story, a story of survival, of trying to live up to expectations, both real and imagined. Capricorn's pride is rooted in identity, in who they believe they're supposed to be. It's not just about how the world sees them, it's how they see themselves. And when that self-image is challenged, When they fall short, feel lost, or fail to meet the high expectations they carry, it shakes their core. Admitting that to others would mean admitting it to themselves, and sometimes that's the hardest part. So the lie becomes a mirror, one they hold up not to fool others, but to remind themselves of who they want to be. They say, "I've got it under control," not because they're lying to you, but because they're trying to believe it themselves. In romantic relationships, this pride can create a wall. Imagine a Capricorn who's struggling emotionally but insists, "I'm good," even when they're visibly shutting down. Their partner might plead, "Talk to me. What's really going on?" And still, Capricorn deflects. Not because they don't care, but because showing that much rawness feels like stepping into a room without armor. In friendships, they might ghost instead of asking for space. In family settings, they'll pretend everything is fine to avoid becoming the problem child. Even when their world is crumbling, they'll smile through it, just to keep their dignity intact. But over time, this kind of pride-fueled lying leads to emotional isolation. People feel pushed away. Loved ones feel like they're walking on eggshells. And Capricorn, who wanted so badly to be admired, ends up alone in their own fortress of silence. The truth is, their pride is a double-edged sword. It fuels their resilience, their discipline, their ability to rise no matter how hard they fall. But it also convinces them they must suffer alone. That being vulnerable is the same as being weak, and that's the real tragedy. Because often the people around them aren't waiting for Capricorn to be perfect. They're just waiting for them to be real. And when Capricorn finally lets the mask drop, when they say, "I messed up," or "I need help," or "I'm hurting," they discover that honesty doesn't always lead to rejection. Sometimes it leads to deeper connection, healing, relief, but they don't get there easily. Because when pride fails, panic takes over. And in those moments when they feel truly cornered, like there's no safe path forward, Capricorn may lie out of pure survival instinct. Let's explore that now. Number 10, when they feel cornered. When we talk about feeling cornered, it's not always physical or literal. For Capricorn, it's often emotional. It's a sense that they've lost control of the situation, the narrative, or the perception others have of them. This might happen during an argument where they feel misunderstood, or when secrets they've worked hard to protect are suddenly at risk, or when someone they love demands a level of honesty they're not yet ready to give. In those moments, lying isn't about manipulation. It's about escaping the pressure, creating breathing room, reclaiming control. For example, imagine a Capricorn teenager caught breaking a rule. They lie instantly, instinctively, not because they're habitual liars, but because they feel cornered by authority. Their mind races. If I admit this, I lose their trust. If I lie, maybe I can fix it later. It's not cold, it's reactive. Now picture an adult Capricorn who's struggling financially. They've made some decisions they're not proud of. Their partner asks, "Is everything okay with the bills?" And they say, "Yes, I've got it handled," even though they're drowning in stress. Why? Because the idea of admitting financial failure feels like surrendering their role as the provider, the anchor, the one who holds it all together. This is the Capricorn dilemma. They're expected to be stable, and when they feel like they can't live up to that, even for a moment, they panic, quietly, internally. And the lie is their emergency exit. It's the "I'm fine" text when they're not fine. It's the "I didn't mean it" after saying something they absolutely meant. It's the denial of fear, even as it tightens in their chest. And in that moment, the lie is a lifeline, but the cost is high. Over time, these reactive lies build distance. They create confusion. People start to sense the dissonance between Capricorn's words and their energy. And the more Capricorn tries to hold the illusion together, the more isolated they feel. The irony, what they're most afraid of, rejection, disappointment, being seen as flawed, is exactly what the lie invites when it inevitably breaks. But Capricorn is also deeply self-aware. Eventually, many of them confront this behavior. They reflect, they recalibrate. They learn that being cornered doesn't have to mean escape. Sometimes it means facing the fear head-on and choosing truth, even when it shakes the ground beneath them. That kind of growth doesn't happen overnight, but when it does, Capricorn begins to see truth not as a threat, but as a tool, not as exposure, but as power. And speaking of power, the next type of Capricorn lie is about leadership, authority, influence, because sometimes they lie not to protect themselves emotionally, but to maintain control over others. Number 11, to keep their authority intact. Capricorn is often seen as the boss of the Zodiac, not necessarily because they're always in charge, but because of the way they carry themselves. They have a natural air of competence. People look to them for decisions, solutions, and stability. They might not ask to lead, but leadership finds them. And with that comes an invisible weight, the need to always seem steady, prepared, and in control. But what happens when they're not? When Capricorns face situations where they're uncertain, overwhelmed, or quietly unraveling, they often hide it. Not because they're trying to deceive, but because they fear what might happen if others saw the cracks in the wall. So they lie, subtly, skillfully. Everything's under control, they say, even when they're spiraling. They lie to maintain a sense of command. Because in their world, authority isn't just about status. It's about being the one people trust when everything else is falling apart. And if telling the truth would shake that trust, they'll shield it with carefully crafted words. At work, this can look like pretending to know the answer during a presentation when they don't. In a group setting, it might mean taking charge of a plan they're secretly unsure of, just to avoid seeming weak. At home, it could be hiding their doubts about a major life decision, because admitting them might inspire panic in others. To Capricorn, leadership is responsibility, and sometimes that responsibility includes keeping others calm, even if it means carrying the storm alone. But that storm doesn't go away. It just builds, and the more they lie to preserve their authority, the further they drift from real connection. They want people to trust them, but they also fear that trust is conditional, that it exists only as long as they appear unshakable. So the lie becomes a shield, not against others necessarily, but against the fear of falling short in the eyes of those who depend on them. This kind of lie isn't about arrogance, it's about duty. Capricorn feels the weight of holding things together, and if a lie helps keep the structure standing, even temporarily they'll use it. But not all Capricorn lies are born from pressure or fear. Some are calculated, quiet, clean, which leads us to the final reason. Number 12, because they see it as a strategic move. Capricorns are long game players. They don't make impulsive moves. They don't bluff unless the bluff has a purpose. They lie sometimes with the same precision that others plan, not to escape a problem, but to engineer an outcome. For them, not every situation requires full transparency. In fact, full transparency can feel like vulnerability, and vulnerability can compromise results. Let's say a Capricorn is negotiating something, a salary, a contract, a new deal. Revealing too much too soon might cost them leverage, so they withhold. They suggest options that don't really exist. They present timing that isn't fully accurate. They nudge others to move in a direction they've already decided on. In dating, a Capricorn might act distant even when they're emotionally invested, not because they're playing games, but because they're testing emotional terrain. They're watching how the other person handles space, pressure, ambiguity. It's not always fair, but it's often deliberate. This strategic lying extends beyond interpersonal dynamics. Capricorns lie to guard the process. They lie when they're in the middle of building something, and they know it's fragile. They don't want feedback. They don't want interference. So they say things like, "I'm not working on anything right now," or "I'm still figuring it out," while behind the scenes, they're meticulously laying bricks toward a massive personal shift. What makes these lies hard to detect is how composed Capricorn remains. Their voice is steady, their energy is controlled. They don't fidget or falter because they don't see the lie as betrayal. They see it as protection, of timing, of direction, of results. But here's the part they often underestimate. People can sense when they're being held at a distance. Even if the lie isn't exposed, the emotional disconnection is felt. Capricorn may think they're playing smart, efficient, tactical, and often they are. But the consequence is relational. The people around them may start to feel like pieces in a larger puzzle, not partners, not equals. And when the truth finally comes out, it's not just the lie that hurts. It's the realization that the Capricorn didn't trust them enough to share the truth. Still, in Capricorn's eyes, the risk of derailing the plan often outweighs the emotional cost. That's the key difference with this final reason. It's not personal, it's strategic. For Capricorn, the lie is not a betrayal of values. It's a means to an end. And in their world, the end better be worth it, because the weight of the lie stays with them long after the goal is reached. Capricorn's strategic use of lying doesn't mean they're manipulative in the classic sense. They don't lie for sport, for drama, or to stir chaos. In fact, chaos is what they run from. Their lies are crafted to prevent instability, not create it. But here's the twist. The very control they seek by lying can sometimes spark the very fallout they hope to avoid. Let's take a Capricorn in a leadership position again. Their lie. Everything's fine. I've already handled it. Or we're on track. Might keep their team calm temporarily. But what happens when the cracks show? When deadlines are missed or decisions backfire? Trust becomes collateral damage. And once people start second-guessing Capricorn's words, regaining that credibility becomes a steep uphill climb. Because while people admire Capricorn's strength, they connect through vulnerability, through honesty, through being human. And that's the danger of lying purely for authority or strategy. The human part can get lost. Capricorns are often so focused on being effective that they forget being authentic can be just as powerful. Sometimes, even more so. Imagine the same Capricorn leader saying, "I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm working on it." That moment of honesty might open a door to trust, collaboration, even respect. It might make others feel seen, valued, included. But that kind of openness feels risky to Capricorn. It requires giving up control, even if just for a moment. And that, for them, is one of the hardest things to do. So they default to the safer path, the crafted response, the half-truth, the lie that protects the image they've built, brick by brick, over years of discipline, sacrifice, and vision. It's not that they lack emotional depth. On the contrary, Capricorn feels everything, deeply. But they were taught, either through life or experience, that showing that depth can be dangerous. So they become masters of emotional strategy. They assess people before they open up. They test environments before they reveal intentions. And if a truth doesn't serve a clear purpose, they often file it away, hidden, controlled, delayed. And yet, despite all this calculation, Capricorns still crave genuine connection. They want to be loved for who they truly are, not just admired for what they do. They want relationships where they can take the mask off, leave the plan behind, and say what's real, without fear that it'll cost them everything. But to get there, they have to risk something they're not used to risking. Honesty with no guarantee, no plan, no angle, just truth. And that's what brings us to the final part of this journey. Not just understanding why Capricorn lies, but asking what happens when they finally stop. Now that you've heard all 12 reasons why Capricorn lies, you might see them a little differently. Capricorn isn't the obvious liar. They're not flashy with deception, and they're rarely careless with words. But they do lie in ways that are subtle, measured, and often painfully human. They lie to protect their reputation. They lie to avoid vulnerability. They lie to stay in control. They lie when they make mistakes they can't admit. They lie to guard their dreams. They lie to dodge confrontation. They lie to play the long game. They lie to test who's really loyal. They lie out of pride. They lie when they feel cornered. They lie to preserve their role as a leader. And yes, they lie because sometimes it's just a smart move. But underneath all of that, there's something deeper, something honest. Capricorn isn't trying to hurt anyone. They lie because the truth, in its rawest form, often feels dangerous to them, too exposed, too uncontrollable, too unpredictable. They've learned to live in a world that rewards success, punishes weakness, and praises those who have it together. So when they feel the pressure to be the rock, the provider, the strategist, the fixer, They sometimes bend the truth to keep the illusion alive, but illusions get heavy. Even the strongest Capricorn eventually gets tired of carrying the version of themselves that everyone expects. And some of them, especially the most self-aware, begin to understand that the real power isn't in control, it's in connection. The lies may hold things together for a while, but the truth is what lets people in. The truth is where real trust lives. And trust, for Capricorn, is the one thing they've always wanted, even if they didn't know how to ask for it. So if you're a Capricorn watching this right now, maybe you saw pieces of yourself in these 12 reasons. Maybe you recognized habits you've built, walls you've kept up, or people you've pushed away trying to protect yourself. Maybe you realized that the person you've been hiding from the world isn't weak, they're just real. And if you're someone who loves a Capricorn, maybe now you understand them better. Maybe the distance you felt wasn't rejection, it was fear. Maybe the silence wasn't indifference, it was them holding everything in, terrified to let go. Either way, here's what we all need to remember. Capricorn doesn't lie because they don't care. They lie because they care so much. They don't know how to carry it out loud. And the best thing we can offer them, whether as friends, partners, family, or just fellow humans, is a safe place for truth to land. No judgment, no drama, just presence. Let's keep that energy going. Now, if this video opened your eyes, made you feel understood, or helped you understand someone else a little better, hit that like button. It's a small click, but it tells us we're doing something that matters. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, Secret of the Zodiac. We bring you content that doesn't just entertain. It reveals, heals, and challenges the way you see astrology. And this series is just getting started. Make sure you check out our other Zodiac breakdowns, especially if you're curious about how other signs lie, love, or lead. Every sign has a shadow. Every sign has a secret, and we're here to uncover them all. But more than anything, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling us which of the 12 reasons hit hardest for you. Do you know a Capricorn who fits this description? Or are you a Capricorn who's ready to speak your truth? Let's start a real conversation in the comments. Let's hear your stories, your experiences, your moments of honesty. This community grows because of you, and your voice makes it better. And if you believe in the work we're doing, if these videos help you reflect, connect, and see the Zodiac with fresh eyes, consider supporting us directly. Super Thanks is now activated on this video. It's a way for you to send a donation in any amount that helps cover the cost of editing, writing, research, and production. Every contribution makes a real difference. It helps us create more videos like this more often with the quality and consistency you deserve. If you've ever wanted to say thank you in a bigger way, this is it, and we mean it from the heart. Your support doesn't just keep this channel alive, it keeps it evolving. So whether it's a like, a comment, a subscription, or a super thanks, thank you for being part of this journey. We'll see you in the next video, where the truth is always waiting to be uncovered.